What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. I appreciate you guys clicking over to come watch this video. I figured today, instead of being an on-the-water video, I would go over my setups that I use. I've been getting a lot of questions about them, and instead of trying to answer everybody's comments about all these different questions, I figured I'd make a full video for this week's video and go over all that stuff. So I'm gonna go over line, baits, reels, rods, the whole 9 yards. So instead of me sitting here talking about what I'm going to talk about, why don't we just hop right into it? Guys, welcome back. Again, I appreciate you guys taking the time to watch this video. I hope you guys can get some questions answered. Pretty much these 4 rods are what I go with, and they cover anything I may want to do. You know, if I need to dock skip, vertical jig, if I'm casting to some fish, whatever the case may be, I can cover it with these rods. So to start it off, I'm going to go in order from shortest to longest. So to start off the video, we're going with my 6-foot Bass Pro Shops Airstream. I'm really am a big fan of these rods. I've got 3 of them. You'll see in this video the exact same, just different links. But they're like $49, $50 at Bass Pro. They're very sensitive. They're lightweight. They've got great actions, and I'm really a big fan of them. For the 6-footer, that was the first one I bought. I bought it for, you know, just as an all-around crappie rod, and I started skipping with it or shooting docks with it. And I found that the tip on this one just isn't quite stiff enough. I was having to do too much when I'm pulling this bait back to shoot it. I'd rather be able to pull it back and shoot, but I was having to do too much of a wrist flip as well to try and get that bait to go far enough. There's just not enough tip on this rod. So I've moved away from that. This is kind of more of I'll use it for vertical fishing, for if I'm gonna do any casting in any fish. Like right now I've got it on a double rig with a 1/16 or a 32nd ounce up here to an 1/8 ounce on the bottom. That's kind of like what I like to go with on my 2 jigs. Smaller at the top, bigger at the bottom. Bigger one acts as your anchor to get those jigs down. So that's kind of this rod here is my setup for that now. It'll still work. Like I said, you can still shoot docks with this rod. It's just the more effort you put into other movements, the more chance you have at missing that hole wherever you're trying to shoot. So you want to be as accurate as possible, because if you hit those floats, hit those pontoons, whatever you're shooting by, you can spook those fish, because a lot of times they're pretty shallow. So went away with that on this rod, more of just, like I said, a vertical jig fishing and casting to fish. On this rod it's a Daiwa, just I think maybe a $30 reel from Academy. It's a 1000 series. It's got a good drag on this reel. I like the drag on this one the best out of all of these. Really smooth drag, and I've got it paired up with 4-pound high-vis Mr. Crappie. So that's the setup for my first rod, the 6-footer Airstream. You can get these at Bass Pro Shops, $50. Moving on to the second rod. It's the newest rod to the edition, the Falcon Buku, I believe is how you pronounce that. This is my new dock shooting rod. It's only a 6-footer, which I'm really liking the shorter length. You'll see I bought a 7-footer to get a little bit stiffer tip for dock shooting, but the 6-footer, I like the shorter distance. I can get a little bit closer to those docks, and the closer you can be to those docks and those holes, the more accurate you're going to be. But the reason I wanted this rod is because it's not like it's an ultralight, but it's not like your normal ultralights. I don't know if you can see this tip or not. Try and get it in the camera, but you've got a pretty stiff tip on this rod. What that allows me to do is whenever I'm set up and I've got my hole picked out, all I've got to do is pull this jig back and let go. The tip of this rod does all the work for me. I don't have to pull it back and flick my wrist at the same time to get that jig to go further. I can just pull it back, let it go, and this rod does all that work. I've only had it out a couple times so far, but it is big difference on my dock shooting. So big fan of this rod. Still, it's a lightweight rod, $50, same price as these others. For what I do with my dock shooting, best rod I think out there right now for that. So I pair that up with this is a Fluger President. I believe it's a 75 size reel, so a small reel, 4-pound Mr. Crappie, high vis again. And like I said, on my dock shooting, I like to go with a 16th ounce jig head. You can use a 32nd. Just the 16th is kind of the best all around. When you go up to a 8th, it's a little too heavy. That jig doesn't want to skip across the water, so 16th is the best jig head you can go with for getting the best skip. So that's my new dock shooting rod. I would recommend picking one of these up if you're gonna start off, because it's a good one to start with. It's cheap enough, and it'll make your dock shooting way easier and less frustrating. So that's the 6-footers. Next up is my 6'6" Airstream from Bass Pro. This was the second Airstream I ever bought after getting that 6-footer. I went with this one again to get that little bit stiffer tip, a little bit longer length rod, because this was kind of gonna be my all-purpose. It is my all-purpose. Out of all these, I can do anything with this rod. I'm still okay with shooting with this rod. It's 6'6". It's got the length to cast these smaller jigs out if I'm casting the crappie. It works just fine for vertical fishing. If I'm dropping straight down some brush piles, it's not super long. I can still drop straight down. So as far as the best all around, I would recommend this one, the 6'6" Airstream Ultralight. Right now I've got it on an 1/8 ounce head, because this is kind of since I got this other dock shooter now, this is kind of my go-to vertical rod for the time being. So I've got that 1/8 ounce on there. And I get a lot of comments on this reel right here. Everybody likes the colors of this one. It's a Lew's speed shooter, Wally Marshall. I don't think they're making these anymore. I believe they're obsolete. You may be able to get on some tackle store websites online and find some, but I don't think they're going to be made anymore. So whatever's out there, I believe, is all that's going to be produced. You can double check me on that. I've tried to find some more. Haven't been able to find any. But that's what this reel is. Again, 4-pound Mr. Crappie high vis, and my best all around for whatever the case may be. If I'm going to pick one and go out to do something, I'm bringing this one with me. Now on to the last one and the longest one. This is my 7-footer. This is the most recent Airstream I bought, because I wanted it, because the longer you get in these rods, they're all ultralight action, but the longer you get, the more backbone and more tip you get. They're a little bit stiffer rods. So I bought this one before I got that one for Christmas for my dock shooting rod, because it's got a good fast tip and pretty stiff backbone to be able to skip that jig. The problem with this one is I don't like the length of it. 7 foot is good, it'll work, but you gotta stay too far back, in my opinion, and the further you get away from that dock, the smaller those holes get, and the better chance you risk it hitting or missing your target and hitting the float, hitting the pontoon, and spooking those crappie. So now, this would be my backup dock shooting rod. I keep it something with a different color on than my other one. That way I can rotate between them. It's still, like I said, all these rods do everything. You can do vertical fishing, casting, whatever you want. I haven't casted it much. I'm not sure. It may be too stiff to cast these smaller jigs. I may dedicate this more to like some underspins or the 1/8 ounce jigs. if the crappie are pretty aggressive. Or if I'm gonna fish a float, this will be my jig and float rod. So that's what this rod's dedicated for. Again, this is the 7-footer. I've paired it up with a Lew's laser speed spin, the 75, 75 size, 4-pound Mr. Crappie. 4-pound Mr. Crappie high vis works for everything. I know people use braid, they use 6-pound. It's crappie. This'll get, unless you plan on catching 5-pound crappie, this'll do just the trick. Don't have a problem with it breaking. So 4-pound Mr. Crappie is the line I go with for all my crappie rods. So that's the rods. All right, now we'll move on to my baits and rigs. So if I'm going to a lake, brand new lake, never been there before, but I want to fish for crappie, this is going to be my choice. This is what I'm going to tie on. This is what I'm going to throw first. Unless the water's super dirty or there's conditions that call otherwise for something a little brighter. If it's just your standard conditions, that's what I'm going with right there. That is a chartreuse head 16th ounce with the monkey milk body. Now, monkey milk body and a blue ice body are interchangeable in my books, but as far as confidence-wise, I'm going monkey milk. That head is a Big Bite Baits 16th ounce jig head, which they have them colored in, I've seen in 32nd and 16th, and I'm sure they've got them in 8th ounce. But they've colored the tips of these heads, and they make one that's got a pink tip. They didn't have any when I went to buy them this week, so I just picked up some black tipped heads, but I'm going to get some more of those pink ones. I like throwing a little extra color in there because crappie, they like color. But that's what that is, and that right there is my go-to setup. If I'm picking up something, most confidence in a bait, I will say. Most confidence is this one right here. Also, for shooting docks, we'll go with that. I've got one tied on my dock shooting rod, actually. A little bit different color, just something different. I like to rotate colors when I'm shooting, just because you catch more crappie doing that if you rotate your colors. But that's my go-to for shooting docks. 16th ounce jig head, probably, I mean, whatever color Bobby Garland you want to use as your soft plastic, but 16th ounce is the best skipping head there is. If you don't hit a 32nd ounce just right, whenever you hit that water, it wants to shoot that jig up, and when you get to skipping that too high, you'll skip up in those dock beams and you risk getting hung up. So 16th, when it allows a little bit flatter skip, they don't want to jump as high. So I like to go 16th. If I need to do 32nd, I can, but 16th pretty much will work all the time. And that's the head I'm talking about. That's a white one, but it's got that pink tip. Really liking those heads with those pink tips on them. But that's my go-to setup for dock shooting. I've pointed this out. If I'm going to do a vertical jig fishing, I like to run 2 baits. If I'm rigged for it, I like to run 2. It's better odds. It'll help you figure out what colors are working best faster, because you're running 2 different colors around those fish. I like to run mine 16 or 12 to 18 inches apart. Like I got these, depending on how deep or how windy, this is kind of my go-to. I like to run a 32nd, 2 1/8. I always go shad higher, and then your black and chartreuse, your electric chickens, your colors, off colors, not shad colors. I like to run those on the bottom. But that's kind of my double jig rig setup right there. That varies depending, I may run a 16th and a 16th. I may run a 32nd and 32nd and add split shot. If the crappie are really finicky down towards the bottom, I'll do 2 smaller jig heads and just add split shots. Another thing you gotta keep in your boats, always have split shots with you when you're crappie fishing, because you can keep your bait profile small and still add that weight to help you get down to the bottom where those fish are at. And I think that covers the basics. That's my go-to color for crappie fishing anywhere around the country. I've got my dock shooting setup and jig head size, my 2 jig setup. You got your singles. Everybody can run a single, any size you want to go on your jig heads. Add your split shot if you want. Running a single eliminates, if you're fishing around trees and you've got to go into the trees, it eliminates how many jigs you're going to break off, because if you drop down in that tree and get that second jig in that tree and hang it up, you're losing 2 jigs at once. So if I'm fishing in the tree, if the crappie are held tight inside the tree, I'll run a single jig setup and add split shot. That way I don't lose so many jigs if I get hung up, because you're going to get hung up. There's no way around it. You can tie your own. You can buy weedless jigs. You can tie your own. There's a trick out there on YouTube you can go find it, where you take some string and you tie up some heavy mono, and that mono sticks out and acts as a weed guard. All that does is it takes that jig. I wish I had some tied up to show you. All it does is it comes out off right there in front of your plastic and acts as a barrier. So whenever you're pulling that jig up through the cover and it hits that tree, it just kicks it. It'll fold down and it just keeps you from hook point from hitting that tree. A lot of times it rolls your bait over and then it comes around that tree just fine. So if you're having a bad problem, you can do that. But that trick's out on YouTube. I think Richard Jean ties that. You can go check out his video on tying that. It's very smart. So that is the rods, reels, line, and my go-to kind of, if I'm just going to a lake, those are the rigs I'm gonna have set up. 4 of them. So now we'll move on to my bait box and kind of the colors I keep. So I use this Flambeau container. Nice big container. Opens up, you got a compartment here at the top. You can hold, pliers. If you're bank fishing, you can hold, I use it for extra bags of Bobby Garlands, because, I keep some colors that I'm probably not gonna use a whole lot, but I like to have them just in case. Crappie can be weird sometimes. It's got this top compartment here. Remove that, and you've got your kind of juice there. You got all your colors. You got spot for, I don't know how many colors you got. You got 1, 2, 4, 8, 12, 24 different colors, and you got 2 big compartments. I keep some floats in these 2 longer compartments. You could put other bags of baits in there if you wanted to, but that's kind of that's what I go to. These are kind of the colors I keep, if you guys can see that or not. So you can see I keep my bigger sections here are for my colors I use the most. I like chartreuse. Of course, you got your Bobby Garlands here and one of their bigger ones. New color here. This is gonna be a game changer. Picked it up. I think it's called Purple Mist. It's a monkey milk bottom half with a translucent with some purple glitter in that top. I think that's gonna be a game changer for me. So I added those to the box. They got a spot for them. Empty spot here. That's where your blue ice would go. Gotta have your blue ice. That's why that's empty. I've been using a lot of blue ice. That's kind of been the go-to color for me this winter so far. That's why those are empty. I just haven't put the baits in the box. They're in the truck. Picked them up earlier this week. But you've got to keep these colors here. You've got to, because yeah, crappie are always going to eat this. It's natural to them. But this past weekend we were fishing and we caught a bunch of fish on these natural colors and they just quit biting on us. We knew they were there. So all I did is I pulled up again and started throwing the licorice, or black licorice I think it is. Just a black and green. Caught 2 or 3. Then I put back on the monkey milk, caught 2 more. Still changing up from that. And believe it or not, after they quit biting, we weren't getting any bites at all, I put this color. It's the Slab Slayer Bobby Garland. in the electric chicken. Vibrant pink top body with the chartreuse tail. I put it on, and I don't know, maybe 2 casts in, we caught our biggest crappie of the day, a 2-pounder. So you can't rule out these colors. You've got to try them. If you know there's fish in the area, you've got to try these colors. Sometimes it just triggers the bigger bites. You got Cajun cricket. Of course, you got your all-time famous there, electric chicken, barbecue chicken. I mean, you got black and pink. So you've got to keep these crazier colors in your box because they will catch those crappie. I believe I've even got a clip. I could probably throw this clip in right now to show you the big fish we caught on this bait right here. Notice that if I hit that, a lot of times I'm around the fish at that point. Called him up with the crazy color.
You both with that one.
I don't know. I don't know if I want to with that bird in my line. Caught him on the crazy color. Too bad there wasn't no crappie tournament today. I'd say we've done pretty good. So, yeah, that's why you keep some of these crazy colors. They'll catch you some big fish sometimes. But that's my crappie box. That pretty much covers any color you'll need, from your basics to your vibrant. So I recommend getting this box from Flambeau. I'm not sure the name of it. You can probably get on their website and find them. It's a great box to store your crappie soft plastics. I don't like keeping bags. Even bass fishing, I take my most common soft plastics and I put them in boxes. It's just easier access for me to get into them and get them out. This is all I keep for my hooks. I don't have all that many right now, which really you don't need all. It's quite a few actually, but doesn't look like much. 1/8 ounce, 32nd, 16th. I keep my 16th in the bigger sections because that's my most common. That's what I use the most. But just keep your basics, chartreuse, pinks, your basic lead heads, and your whites. Nothing too fancy there. Always keep a few road runners. You never know when you're going to need some extra flash in your bait. But that should be about it. That's as basic as it can get. Plenty of colors. Really, you can only have 2 rods. I'd carry a 6.6 and a 6-footer. Make sure your 6-footer is a little stiffer. 6.6 can be your basic ultralight. Take those with you. Rigging up with some 4-pound Mr. Crappie. Go hit the water, and I promise you, you're going to catch more crappie. Appreciate you guys again tuning in. Appreciate all you guys subscribing. Appreciate the likes, the great comments. It's really uplifting seeing all the good comments and even ideas and even the constructive criticism. It helps us take what we're doing now and make them better in the future. So keep it all coming. And that's going to wrap it up. We'll see you guys next Thursday. And I promise next Thursday we'll be on the water catching some big old crappie.